So one of the great things about saying yes to following Jesus is that our whiteboard gets erased. All the sin on it just gets wiped out. But what if over time you keep adding back marks, sin marks over there? Is there a time where God eventually looks at all the marks you've added in and going, you know what, I'm just done with you. Let's discuss. Hi, I'm Craig Smith, and I love answering your questions about God, the Bible, following Jesus, the church, all those kinds of things. Today we're going to talk about a question that I get asked quite a bit, which is, hey, I'm saved, I suggest following Jesus, but I keep sinning. Is there something wrong with me? Yeah, I think it's probably pretty easy to feel like once we say yes to following Jesus, especially if we understand that at the moment we do that, the Holy Spirit comes to us and begins to empower us and change us from the inside out, that we should suddenly become perfect. But that's not the way it works. And the Bible makes it clear that that's not God's expectation. And so the reality is, if you are a follower of Jesus, if you're saved, but you still find yourself struggling with sin, we have a word for you, and that word is normal. Okay, we all do that. You're completely normal. Maybe one of the most powerful verses that we can go to in the Bible to understand how God thinks about this is Romans 3:23. Pretty common verse, you may have heard it before. It says that we have all sinned and fall short of the glory of God. For we have all sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And it's interesting. He says, for we've all sinned. That's past tense. Okay, so that's before we said yes to Jesus, we might say. So in our past, we've sinned. But then he says, and we fall short, and that's present tense. In other words, that's still going on. So Paul, as a follower of Jesus, says we've all sinned in the past, we've all done that, and we, myself included, we all still fall short of the glory of God. But that doesn't break the relationship with God. It doesn't kick us out of heaven. It doesn't cause us to lose our salvation. Our sin does get in the way of us experiencing God's love and the intimacy of that relationship, which is why we need to confess our sin, turn back to Him, and be forgiven of it. But our sin doesn't end the relationship. The reality is that sin has always been a part of the human experience, and until Jesus comes back and we're fully transformed, it's going to continue to be part of the experience. And the letters that John wrote, one of the things he said was, if you say you're without sin, you're kidding yourself. That's Craig's paraphrase, but he said, yeah, if you say you don't have any sin, you're just wrong. That's just not true. We're not there yet. However, what is happening is the Holy Spirit is changing us from the inside out so that over time we become less sinful. There is a progression in that. The technical terms for this is sanctification. Two big things that happen if we want to use the technical language. When we say yes to following Jesus, we're justified. What Jesus did on the cross, the forgiveness He bought for us, was applied to our account. Our account's wiped clean. The ledger's wiped out. And so it's just as if, that's kind of what justified means. It's just as if we had never sinned. That's an instantaneous, immediate, complete thing. But then there's something called sanctification. And sanctification is the gradual process of actually beginning to live out the justification that's been applied to us. So justification is applied to us. Sanctification is something we cooperate with the work of the Holy Spirit, and over time, we become less sinful. We become more interested in the things of God and less interested in the things that are not of God. That takes place over time. And it's not a straight shot. Some people go, well, I feel like, I said yes to Jesus, so I should be getting more and more holy just like this. I don't know anybody that had that experience. Maybe there is someone. I've never had it. I personally, that's not been my story. My story has been, I said yes to Jesus, and I was like, oh, I got more holy, and then I backslid, and then I got a little bit more holy, and then I took some backtracks, and it's this weird squiggly kind of line. But over time, there is a general progression upwards, and that's the evidence the Holy Spirit's working in me. So, if you're saved but you still sin, does that mean that you have something deeply wrong with you? No, it means you're normal, but it means we need to continually confess our sin, be forgiven of it, and then work to cooperate with the Holy Spirit so He can make us holy over time. So, sometimes people ask, well, if we're going to be forgiven of our sin anyway, then, isn't that my get out of jail free card? Does it really matter if I sin? Why would I work with the Holy Spirit to try to get more holy? And the reality is that if the Holy Spirit is in you, working in you, if you have that relationship with God through faith in Jesus, that's not an attitude that makes any sense, because you're not going to want that. If you're really in that relationship with God, you're going to want to become more holy and more righteous because of what He did for you, because of His love for you, and because He's stirring up new desires in you. So anybody who consistently says, well, yeah, I prayed a prayer at a camp or whatever, and now, I can just be forgiven for anything I do, so I can just go out and do whatever I can do. I'm going to go, hang on a second. I'm not necessarily interested in how righteous you are as the proof that you are in a relationship. but I am interested in how much you're beginning to desire to grow in righteousness. If you have no desire to grow in righteousness, then I begin to worry about whether or not you really have a genuine saving relationship with Jesus.